electronic voice phenomena, when we get voices on recorders that we didn't hear with our own ears, when they're answering things and when they're talking, it seems like the times that they respond are usually when we're being compassionate. So it's not normally, hey, what's your name? What year is it? How did you die? Blah, blah, blah. It's when you say something like, I bet you're really tired of people walking around in here all day long. And then you get a reply. It's when you show compassion that you get amazing responses.
Now, again, I don't know. Can you talk for about another 10 more minutes and then we can wrap it up, or do you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I got no school curfew or anything.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Or a husband. I'm sorry I said that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I won't have a wife after I mentioned about her cooking today.
Sasquatch. He sits in for him. So.
Yeah. I just said, like maybe I won't have a wife after I nationally and internationally talked about how horrid her cooking actually is. But that's another thing. I got fat from eating TV dinners.
We'd rather have her at work instead of cooking anyway. She's definitely better using her skills.
Yeah. Yeah. But, what you do, I really admire it because you look at it as a scientific way to do it. And you're trying to research it. And I think that's what needs to be more done. Again, talking to these ghost hunters, they go, a lot of them don't know what they're doing. They take it as like I said, they take it as a hobby or a social gathering, and what information they're getting, they're not really getting.
Oh yeah, and a lot of people enter it too with a belief system. So everything that they encounter is within that belief system. So if something scared them, it might be a demon. Or if somebody's feeling weird, they may be possessed. And so I think when you go into research with a belief already in place, you're not really researching. You're just trying to verify your belief. Your belief should be the result of all of this evidence that you put together, looked at, and said, well, there seems to be one logical conclusion. So I get nervous when I see, and I see this in the field of ancient giants too. There's people that want to prove the Nephilim. They have a religious reason for wanting the giants to be from the Bible. And when you enter with that, everything you come across, you can work and bend and mold to support your belief.
Yeah, and that's what I think people do. There's certain groups out there, they actually try to make it fit what they feel it should be. And their research is going to be tainted really bad because it's being manipulated.
Oh, yeah, or they learn their research from TV shows.
Yeah,
so now,
or the internet.
Zach, they're going to be possessed all the time, or maybe they should harass the ghost, or, the notions they get, they just pass on popular belief, that's sad. That's a I don't know. We don't get knowledge if we keep passing on popular social belief.
Now, two other things I find interesting. I can't remember what state and what cemetery it is, but it was on the internet, it was on YouTube, and it was actually on the news back a few months ago, that there's this one cemetery. You drive in it, and you go down a hill, a slight, hill, not much, but, you go down it. There's an old oak tree. Okay? You come to a stop. Put the car in neutral.
Oh, yeah.
And you start going back up the hill backwards.
Uh-huh. Yep. I think if I recall, that one might be in the Midwest. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I remember that much. I remember.
But, you get the urban legend stuff, too, and that can really taint things. I mean, there's people out there that believe in the, Slender Man. Well, and it's basically just a made-up, interesting urban legend, but, yeah.
But actually, the news... the people, the news reporters, actually did it. They filmed it. They took their vehicle, a minivan, filmed the whole thing, and they tried it numerous times. Same thing kept happening. And it's at that part,
Yeah, it could be a gravity hill. There's a lot of gravity hills, where it looks like it's a hill, technically isn't. But it's just because of the way the land lays that it appears you're going uphill.
Yeah, that could be. But it's still interesting, seeing it. I mean, it's something I'd like to check out before I die.
And I don't like to rain on parades because there's still so much mystery out there that, I like to use the example, back in the time of the plague, people were dropping in dead. They didn't know why. They thought, maybe they weren't the right religion, maybe they, were born on the bad moon or whatever. They had no idea what was killing them. And, it's very magical and really scary. And I'm sure everybody adhered to whatever they thought would keep them from getting the plague. But then later on, we end up having microscopes. We find bacteria, and then we're able to cure it. But we find this little thing they couldn't see and they didn't know was there, was killing them. Now, yeah, we took the romance out of it. It wasn't because they were born on a Tuesday or whatever. But we opened up a whole new world of bacteria and all of the implications and viruses and other things we could see microscopically. So when I rain on one parade in the paranormal world, it means if we get to the science of this, we may have just opened up something that gives us infinite, powers and knowledge and a whole universe we didn't know is affecting our universe right now. A little bacteria was killing a big person, and you couldn't even see it.
Well,
so imagine what's happening that we don't see that's affecting us greatly.
But don't forget, at that time frame, too, the doctors didn't even sanitize themselves. I mean, they didn't think about,
germ thing.
They didn't realize they had germs on their hands. So they're operating, especially like even in the Civil War, for example, right? The assembly line, they were working on one patient to the next patient. They never washed their hands. They never thought about it. And what they were doing is spreading bacteria, from one person to the next person, and then they had a whole bunch of people die.
Exactly, and you're looking around at each other going, we don't know why this is happening. And so we have that element here. Things happen and we go, we don't know where this is coming from. But there's probably a whole universe that we can discover if we just are willing to look at the science of it. I think physics will eventually be able to explain this whole interaction. Psychic, ghosts, heaven, the whole concept of other universes. And when we understand that, imagine the unbelievable, we'd be like gods.
It could be. Now, do you feel like when somebody dies, is that the end of them? Like when you unplug a computer and it's unplugged, it doesn't exist? Or do they kind of go into another dimension, their soul or memory or whatever it is? Does it transfer?
What I'm going to say is going to sound a little freaky, but I'm going to tell you.
Please do. I want to know.
I've had a lifetime of coming up with this concept.
Please do.
Okay, you and I, we could do a photograph of ourselves. We've got a two-dimensional visual of ourselves. It doesn't have any depth, doesn't have knowledge, it doesn't have biology. It doesn't have any of that. You just go one step and look at us. Suddenly, one step in dimension, you've got human beings in this world. All this life. And imagine one more step, what it would be like. So our two-dimensional form, our photograph, is a facsimile of us, only a visual one. You and I are a three-dimensional form. We're a facsimile of something that already exists in the next dimension. That awareness for us will occur. But we are a physical form forced to kind of play out things like that photograph's forced to be hanging on the wall looking like you.
Wow. So what happens when you die? Or do you die? Does your body die, but the rest of you?
Your body will die, like that photograph might burn in a fire. We're mortal. And I think in a way we're sort of forced to be mortal. I think in the grander scheme of things, whatever you consider to be the divine, we're forced to do this sort of penance, to be physical, to be vulnerable, to be biologic, to know we can die, to make decisions about should I feed my child or should I feed myself? Should I kill my neighbor, and steal his stuff? We have all these things, all these variables, many ways you can live a life. And we're sort of recording that in a way for the universal knowledge of all the ways we can do this while we're here. So if you were really wealthy and you never had been without money, you wouldn't understand anybody that's poor. But if somebody took away your money and you suddenly had to earn a living and try to find a place to live, you may suddenly appreciate that you were exceptionally blessed. Our spirit form is exceptionally blessed. It's eternal. But it would never understand life if we didn't do a physical form.
Wow. Oh, so I always felt maybe when we die...
Take that to bed and try to fall asleep. Yeah.
I thought basically that maybe when we die we go into a parallel universe or something,
It
or
is. It's really adding another dimension. I remember when I was 16, my father had a heart attack. He died on our kitchen floor, and the paramedics said he has no vital signs. And they worked on him and worked on him. About 4 minutes later, they got him back with the paddles. And as they rolled him out, he described to me what he had experienced, but then he gestured for me to lean over, and I leaned over, and he said to me, "That was the real world. This one's fake."
I wouldn't
Now,
doubt that.
if yeah, imagine if a two-dimensional photograph could spend a day being the person it represents. Wouldn't it seem like it's a god? I mean, it can move, it can eat, it feels things, it hears, it's got senses, all these emotions. It would seem unbelievably joyous, as if it got lifted from a prison. And that's a kind of concept. When you add one more dimension to us, what we experience is exceptional.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to say out there hi, Ronnie. Dawson is listening to our show. I just checked, and he was sending a message. One thing, I got another story. My dad had Alzheimer's. Well, actually, he had dementia, and then went into Alzheimer's. And it was so bad, the last year, he was nothing but a vegetable. And he was even towards last on a life support at the nursing home. And I got a phone, and they did a lot of x-rays, and the doctors said he was brain dead. I mean, and they even at one point asked me and my brother to, could they shut the stuff off? And we said no. And anyway, all of a sudden I get this phone call from the doctors. They said, "Hey, your dad is talking. Get down here right away." So I drove from Tacoma to Shelton, Washington, went in where my dad was. He was sitting up in the bed. Okay. Sitting up. He knew for the year before that, even before he went into the vegetable state, he didn't even know who I was. Okay. And my kids were young, and he thought they were Nazis. That's how bad it was. And then, then he went to the stage. He didn't, that was it. He was nothing. All of a sudden, when I went in there, he of course, he didn't know what job I had at that point because it changed. But he started asking me about my work, how things are going. We talked for about almost an hour. And then he started talking about, well, I was just talking to your mom. And he says it's so beautiful where she's at. And my mom had 4 brothers that all died. And, and he's talking about, my uncles, that he was talking to him, and just like he was actually have talked to him, And we talked, and then he looked at me, and he says, "Son, I want you to leave. I'm going to die now."
Huh.
And so the doctors, told me I maybe should leave, By the time I left there and got home, he already passed. Mm-hmm. Talked to the doctors, and they even, when they dissected his brain, they said they don't understand that how he could have even carried on a conversation, let alone be totally alert and carry on a conversation and remember things and all that stuff. But the story he was telling me about, my mom died a few years before that. And how he was describing where she was at and that she's waiting for him. And, it was like, it was just the strangest thing I ever gone through in my life.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. Yep. It just, all of this confirms for me. After my father had his heart attack, he lived for a few days in the hospital, but we came home one night. His vital signs were doing well, so we were kind of happy. And I went to bed, and while I was sleeping, I got woken up by somebody pulling on my big toe. And I looked up, and I saw my dad's silhouette just standing there, tugging on my toe. Well, when I was growing up, my dad traveled all the time. And my mom would be like, well, she's got to go to school the next day. Don't wake her up. But I wanted to know he made it home. So his thing was he'd always come in and pull on my big toe. And in a subtle way, it'd be like, yeah, I'd wake up a little bit enough to know, okay, Dad's home. So he's pulling on my toe. I'm thinking, wow, he got out of the hospital already. And